Beyond 3D.
Good Saturday evening, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Beyond 3D. Matt and Clint coming to you from Studio 1, the one on the right, at RWP 98.7, 98.3, in and around the peninsula and around the world, over the internet, streaming live.
Uno.
Dos.
No, Studio Uno.
That too.
Hello, Matt.
How are you, Clint?
Good, thank you.
Oh, very good. Well, you've had a week off insofar as you've been news-free?
It's been a challenging week this week. Mm-hmm. Normally every week you say to me, how's your week been? And I say, yeah, it's been good. This has happened, or this has happened, or this has happened. But it's been a challenging week this week, so I've been media-free. Mm-hmm. Kind of refreshing for a change, because, sometimes when you take this on, it becomes all-encompassing.
Yes, it is.
And dealing with that level of negativity on an ongoing basis. And let's talk about there's positive stuff there as well.
Oh, absolutely.
But it becomes, after a while, heavy.
Some of it can get very, very heavy. It all depends on our perspective.
Well, not yet, that's true. And there's a lot of stuff that we sift through that we don't talk about because it's too heavy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But we still have to decipher that, don't we? And take it on and throw it away if you don't need it. So it's been a heavy couple of months. But yeah, I've had media blackout last week. So what's been going on? I have no idea.
You haven't really missed very much, quite frankly. It's been the usual United States stuff.
No.
It's been the usual England and France and European stuff.
Yeah, something burned down, didn't it, in London?
A nice 27-story or so building. But here's the interesting thing about it. It did catch fire. People, God bless them, had to leave the planet because of it, and people were hurt. But the building did not come even close to collapsing like the World Trade Center did. And there was a larger fire.
Yeah, well, hello. What does that tell you?
I found that absolutely fascinating.
Because the laws of metaphysics bend differently there, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. So that was one of the things. I'm trying to think of what happened on the positive side, and I think the most positive thing a lot of us did was to actually stay away from the news media, who is thriving, reveling in all of the negativities worldwide and not really spending enough time talking about the things that are going on that are actually decent.
I did see last week that there was quite a few orcas and sea lions had washed up dead on the Californian coast. I don't think that would have anything to do with Fukushima, do you?
No, I don't think so.
Because you'd be an idiot to think that.
Absolutely. You're not supposed to think things like that. But quite frankly, the way I look at it, the positive aspect of it is we have, and we've said this before in this show, we have gone through a major energy shift in the last couple of months, and that energy shift has affected the entire populace of this planet. What's happening is, spiritually, certain people have awakened and are ready to move to the so-called next level. The next level doesn't mean we're leaving for Mars or anything like that. The next level means, from a spiritual standpoint, your awareness is heightened, your awareness has expanded. And some people are having a very hard time with that right now, and that is why the world is in a lot of turmoil and strife.
I would have equated it a little bit to those people that aren't spiritually inclined, but are playing along tonight.
No, everybody is spiritually inclined. Some people are not religiously inclined.
Thank you. Thank you for correcting me there. I appreciate that. But you knew what I was.
Yes, I do. I absolutely do know. Yeah.
It's kind of like when Goku powers up in Dragon Ball Z and he goes up to that next level. That's kind of the way.
Yeah, we're leveling up.
You're leveling up.
Absolutely. And so, in spite of ourselves and in spite of what the world is trying to put at us, because we've talked about this as well, and it was very interesting this week. Rosie and I, my wife and I, have been doing a lot of healings on people, and we have we're talking to a person that was from up in Naura, and they're going through some things, and I had to energetically scan a person. And guess what word popped into my head?
Hang on a minute. You can do that from a distance.
Absolutely.
A long distance, can't you?
It's distance healing, absolutely.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so guess what popped up in your head?
Well, after scanning this being that was causing a lot of strife, guess what word popped into my head?
Hang on, can I clarify something for a minute?
Yep.
I know this might be a bit annoying.
No.
You're scanning your friend.
Yeah, I'm scanning a person.
Oh, you're scanning an entity or a person.
Yes. an entity or a person. You can scan anything.
Okay, but
I'll start the story from the beginning.
Matthew.
I'll start the story from the beginning.
Because you go into these conversations knowing exactly what you're talking about, but some people don't. And sometimes you even lose me.
Fair enough. We do energy healing.
Thank you.
By doing energy healing, what we can do is use what is called Prana, life force, and we can project it through our hands or through thought, and we can actually heal another person who is going through any kind of ailments, whether it be physical or whether it be mental, psychological, or anything like that. But what some people tend to do, they said, can you please scan the energy of a certain person?
Okay, I understand.
And tell us what's going on there, because there's been conflict or strife. So I did that this past week, and it was a very interesting scan. But a word came up as I was scanning the protagonist.
Okay.
And you'll understand the word when I say it, because then you will know exactly what this protagonist is.
Well, for the last 60 seconds, I've been sitting here waiting, and you know how impatient I can be sometimes and how incredibly patient I can be.
The word is simply Loosh.
Okay.
And I was like, wow. And
hang on a minute, hang on. Okay. I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Mm-hmm.
All right. How do you not know that word did not spring forth from your own subconscious?
That was the only word that came to mind to describe the energy pattern around this person.
Okay. So for you to identify with what was you were doing, for you to not use that word in that instance means that your brain would have to be multitasking. You'd have to be doing two separate things. One, concentrating on the prana healing, and two, mindfully thinking about Loosh. Now, because you weren't mindfully thinking about Loosh, that you were focusing on the prana healing, for that word to pop into your conscious like it did, there was no trigger for that to happen, was there?
There was a trigger.
What was it?
The energy I felt.
Okay. So you're able to label it straight away.
That is how it was labeled.
No doubt.
That is how it was labeled. For that to come up in that specific instance that way, that's what it is.
So we're talking about a parasitic.
Oh, definitely.
Okay. So what can you do as a prana healer in that instance to help that person?
Cleanse it away. Get rid of it.
Okay.
Negate it.
And what are we talking, a couple of days for that person to feel better about themselves, or?
20 minutes.
Okay.
What you can do is people can be shielded, energetically shielded. People can use different forms of crystals and things like that as diversionary targets. There's a lot of different techniques that can be used that can help people to negate negative entities and energies around them. And by removing that pattern, of the person can get back to somewhat normal, if you want to call it that, life. But it's interesting to see just how many negative people there are out there that are storing this kind of energy. It is absolutely amazing. There are a lot of, for lack of a better term, energy vampires out there that are willing to suck that life force from you. So I found that very interesting this week.
I'd find it very interesting if somebody heard you say that tonight and nodded along and said, yeah, I know a couple of people like that, or said, I used to know, because you've said tonight that a shift happened a couple of months ago. So when I say used to know, those people might no longer have them in their life.
A lot of people are out there, and the positive aspect of things, there are a lot of light workers out there, there are a lot of spiritual beings out there that are working with people. Sometimes they know it, sometimes they don't know it, but they're working to rid this plane of existence, at least, of a lot of that negative stuff, because it really does stop. What it's stopping is a person's spiritual evolution, and that is, as far as I'm concerned, the absolute worst thing you could possibly do. It's a universal sin as far as I'm concerned.
Now, you were talking about light workers. Does that have anything to do with our guest next week at all?
Yes.
And I'm fishing here because you alluded to me during the week something very, very interesting, but you won't go any further with who our guest is next Saturday night.
It has quite a bit to do with it, because this person also studied under the same teacher I did.
Well, this will be your interview. I'll be riding shotgun for this one.
That's probably, yeah, but you'll enjoy this because the information that this person has is absolutely phenomenal. You will be quite intrigued, I think the word would be.
You're not giving nothing away, are you?
Not now.
No?
No.
Okay.
Not now, but next week.
Are they, what field are we talking? Like any other particular guest we've had before?
It's a doctor.
A doctor. We've had many doctors.
It's another doctor.
Okay.
But also a medical doctor.
Okay.
As well as being a minister, as well as being a healer.
Okay.
He works with stuff you like. Gadgets.
Well, there's many things that I like, Matthew Adams.
Light spectrums.
Okay. Sounds interesting.
Sonic tonalities.
Well, you almost had me if you had have said levitation then. Sonic levitation. You would have almost had me.
I'd have to ask him about that myself. There's a lot of information going on.
This is like Dr. Richard Alen Miller stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, quite different but similar in a lot of ways. The information that the two people have is absolutely astounding. I mean, literally astounding. So I think people will absolutely enjoy that next week coming up.
Does this doctor share his information at such a rapid bullet pace as Dr. Richard Alen Miller?
Yep.
Oh, no, really? I don't want another turbo.
It's turbo mode.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good man, but turbo mode.
No, that'll be fun.
Yeah. So I think everyone will enjoy that. And it's just the fact that there are people out there, as I said earlier, that are doing the work and trying to help as many people go forward, for lack of a better term. It's 360 degrees every direction, so you're just trying to expand. That's a better way of putting it.
We haven't had Dr. Miller on since 2015.
Really?
Yeah, I know. I'm shocked too.
Amazing. So maybe we should revisit.
I don't know if anyone's prepared for this tonight. We haven't given them any warning. You want to play? You really want to play Miller?
Honestly, it's the best way to do it, and it will prepare people for the kind of information that's coming up in the weeks to follow.
I'm just looking to see if I've got it here. Hang on. This is really bad radio, Matt. Oh, I've got some.
Excellent.
Oh, okay. Would you like to introduce him? This is an old interview too. Mm-hmm. You want to play? You want to play this now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Quite frankly, people need to see the kind of information that's out there.
It's in the folder, so it's good to go when you're ready.
Yep, no problem.
Cool, it's Miller time.
Ready, set, go.
Beyond
333 D. Everyone out there, welcome to this week's edition of Beyond 3D, and this is beyond a treat as far as we are concerned, right, Clint?
I'm sitting here with a smile on my face. If there was one person I could interview to my fantasy dinner, it would be at the head of the table, this gentleman right now.
Absolutely, positively. I'm just looking forward to this.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight on Beyond 3D, and it is with our esteemed pleasure to introduce Dr. Richard Alen Miller.
Dr. Miller. Dr. Miller, welcome to Beyond 3D.
My pleasure. And so here we are.
I love the fact, Richard, that I was driving in here tonight contemplating how far we've come, and I was thinking when I was a child I was under the impression that everything had already been discovered, and yet as an adult now I'm realizing that was just the tip of the iceberg of all the wonderful things that life has to offer.
Yes, and further, technology is illusion. What's real is your imagination. We call, like we used to say, as chemistry has come out of alchemy, so now magic will come out of physics. Physics is an old school. It doesn't work. And the Aborigine, Hopi, others, Provider, have ways of being in this universe that are far more effectual in their habitat. And basically, there are 4 mammals on this planet right now that are more evolved technically than man. Orca has a cerebral cortex that's twice the size of man, and that mammal is firing 60% of it. And look at the extent of its habitat. And guess what? Dolphin, who also have a language that's at least 10 times more complicated or efficient, if you will, than Hebrew, Okay, that's the John Lilly studies. Now, the dolphin are hunted by the orca. That means food chain. And that means there's something more going on here.
Well, yesterday we were talking about, we didn't touch on remote viewing with the military, if you want to, along
some of
those
the
lines.
work I did for the military.
Yep.
Well, okay, it started with SEAL Corporation, and I did 12 basic reports that will be in a new book called The SEAL Reports, with birth charts and backup material that I sent on each report, and where we were on maybe 15 different projects I was doing to include extrasensory perception. Once I had done that and had a bunch of creepy people going through laboratories where we trained them how to do autonomic function response using biofeedback, how to do a polygraph, how to fake a polygraph, how to do all kinds of things. Neurolinguistics, where you make certain your eyes don't go in this direction, they go in that direction, that kind of thing. Because all of your physical movements, that you're unconscious, is a part of language. And you're saying things, even though it may seem in opposition to what you're thinking. It's not. There's ways you can train the mind, like listening to sound in your body. When dimethyltryptamine is released, there are things you can do that will regulate and be monitored differently using electronics. Once I did that, then Dr. Carl Schleicher approached me and asked me if I wanted to be Northwest Regional Director of MRU, Mankind Research Unlimited. Look it up. It still exists. Charles Stone, I think, is the one directing it now. It's not the way it was in the early years, where I had Stanford Research Institute, I had Livermore, I had China Lake, I had the Boeing Scientific Research Laboratories, I had deep pockets whenever I did different projects. And at any given moment with MRU, I'd have probably about 20 different ongoing projects. A couple might be at the UW with 2 graduate students doing Carillion photography, whatever. And we did these things for another 6.5 years. And I saw things and was exposed to things I still do not know what it meant. I saw a material at the University of Chicago that is supposedly from an alien craft. It was a material that would appear to be like foil, that had superconductivity properties to it. It was very thin, and I took... First thing I did in my experiment on this artifact was that I fired a 50 caliber cannon at it and then went down with an electron microscope looking for lattice damage. I wanted to see what kind of material it was from a solid state physics point of view, and I discovered it was 100 times stronger than diamond. And what happened to the material literally was it wrapped itself around the bullet. It just, collapsed into the bullet and wrapped itself like foil might that didn't break. And then after the bullet had hit it, within about 10 to 15 seconds, it flowed back into position like water. Yeah, I've never seen anything like it. And I was never told where it came from or it went to next. The scuttlebutt is that it had come from the Florida Everglades, but who knows? It could have been dug out of a tomb from 100,000 years ago or something. Who knows? I don't know. It was impervious. It had some writing on it that was, cipher, glyph. I don't know what that was. I looked at it from my physics point of view, and it was 100 times stronger than diamond. We don't have anything like, that's not true. We do now have something that's 100 times stronger than diamond. But back in the 70s, when I looked at it, it was completely unknown. This was written up in detail in an article in Boing Boing magazine called The Modern Alchemist, and it was when my new book, The Modern Alchemist, came out years ago in the 90s. That now is used as a graduate text in Jungian psychology at a number of different universities as a graduate text. And so I was writing on at the time I was doing all of these kinds of things. Today, I have another book called with Spook Central, the work I did at MRU, and I saw things that I have no idea even today. I watched firewalkers up in Mount Vernon, red feather shaman, walk on fire, and we found parts on their body where they were radiating the heat rather than it doing damage on their feet, because it was superconducting the heat away into a larger area that was radiated out of their body. How do you do that? And I've seen white feather shaman walk up the Mount Rainier in bare feet, Sherpa. How can they do that without frostbite? These were the kinds of things the military wanted regarding what they would call super soldier. They didn't call it super soldier back then, but when Jack Schwartz out of Portland could later with Alethea Foundation out of Ashland could stick a large needle through his arm and stop the bleeding at will. You don't think the military didn't want to know how that worked? We studied him at the Menninger Foundation in Topeka, Kansas, using biofeedback, trying to understand the mechanisms involved. Sometimes we made discovery or started a direction of research, and sometimes we closed it down. Back in the 70s, it was all about blue sky. It did not mean, because we were doing a direction of study, that we had any idea where it was going to lead. It was like blue sky. Today, in the 80s, I watched it all change to application. If it did not have a market application, it was not funded. And that's that. It changed in the 80s. And it was all in the 80s when science no longer decided it needed to advance human beings and technology. That's when it all stopped. So I was there when it happened. I was part of the one generation issuing in a different generation about marketing, controlling the masses, Travistock, the drill.
Just going over my notes here, and interesting. Military, I can understand that I have a few friends that were in the Navy, retired, but they never really retire.
Imagine that. That's the difference between the two navies. There's Navy and Navy intelligence.
Well, a friend of mine just got, I looked at what he was doing, and he just, I won't mention any names, but he's now working for an airline out of Ypsilanti, Michigan as a pilot, so I know what that means. Quite frankly, with the military, I'm very interested in what is going on out in space, insofar as the Navy having a fleet out in space, from what I understand.
Yeah, a breakaway. I don't know anything about that. Carol Rosen has become a close friend and is an activist in the space treaty program, where we don't take our BS and take it into space. We leave it down here on Earth. Good luck with that. I don't know. Navy has always ruled the sea. That's where technology was, with Army and CIA coming in about 10 years later with creepy people trying to stare at goats and run through walls. That's Army intel, oxymoron, where the general crashes into the wall, picks himself up and says, well, I must not have had the right attitude. I mean, you have to have a belief system that is in your mind's eye to be able to run through a wall. And bilocation and remote viewing and astral projection and all these things with Shirley MacLaine out on a limb being sawed off, that part was all part of open season for the military back in the 70s. And the guy that ran all of that, old man DuPont, and he reported directly to Rockefeller. Now, that's all changed because Monsanto was a small weapons company way down the list in there under DuPont. And now it is possibly the biggest giant pharmaceutical company in the world. When you talk about the size of pharmaceutical houses and their relationship to the universe, 40th down in just pharmaceutical houses in cash flow base for a given year is Johnson & Johnson Wax, and their annual budget at 40th down is 4 times the state of Oregon. So this is what we mean about transnational corporations and why Jimmy Carter 2 months back in an interview at HAARP, said, yes, Washington is for sale. We are now being run by transnational corporations operating as the New World Order of Beyond Boundaries and Agenda 21 and the United Nations.
Beyond. 3. Because there's no gold in Fort Knox, is there? No.
Where did it go?
China.
Goldfinger. I don't know. Jesus, I'm just a nerd working in a laboratory. And basically, the only reason I'm as knowledgeable as I am is I chose to be a polymath rather than become an expert in a minor subset in physics.
And that's what we like to do too, Richard, is try and share this information with everybody.
Well, it's about time somebody says something.
Well, this is the thing. A lot of people out there know what's going on. I just don't think they know what to do about it because they're scared of the system.
Only thing they can do is get closer to your own center. That's where the truth really lies, and then it won't matter. Because, as Aleister Crowley put it, if you're doing your true will, none will say nay.
That's absolutely right. And that's coming from Aleister.
That's how you know what you're supposed to be doing. You're not, that's what a master is. Master is not in conflict with anything. That is a definition of what a master is in the first place. That's how you recognize who to study from.
And that's why we hold you in high esteem, Richard.
So I know that I don't know, and I'm not going to call myself a master because I don't want that kind of karma or responsibility. What I am right now is trying to become enlightened.
As we all are.
Well, then there it is. That's your responsibility.
That's a general responsibility for everybody out there, and I think it's well adhered to. You have to adhere to that, and we have to stop looking for outside influences and sources to give us.
It's not about the outside. That part is illusionary, just like Castaneda, the Tonal and the Nagual. The Nagual, reality. Reality is that which cannot be known. It can only be experienced. Like Simon says, you can go halfway to the door. The goal is that you have no goal. It isn't about the door. It's about the journey. We miss the forest through the trees.
That's right. Being that you have the connections that you do, what have you heard lately as far as cutting-edge technology? We always say we're at least 20 to 30 years behind the times. I want to know
Boeing has a magnetic monopole. That means we have an inertialess craft that now uses super cavitation processes so that you can travel in the water at Mach 3.
What?
Wow.
Are you joking?
China started that with a torpedo, and now we have an inertialess craft that can do that. Boeing. That's technology. Lockheed has a teleportation laser, which means we no longer need encryption. We can deliver it to a specific point in space-time,
point to point.
And that's that.
That's it.
Cannot be intercepted.
When did you first hear whispers of that technology, Richard?
You mean seeing these kinds of things?
Yeah.
Well, when I was working for the military, I saw technology we didn't have. Where did it come from?
Interdimensional?
But I'm not even talking about reverse technology. I'm talking about products or, artifacts that, the Oregon vortex that bends light to 40,000 feet. How does that work?
Well, that's creepy science.
It's a mini black hole. We have all kinds of anomalies on the Earth. I don't know how this is all going to work. It is 3 weeks ago, the Navy intelligence, Navy deployed a new weapon on Reedsport, Oregon, up near Portland on the coast. It was lithium in an aerosol to lock down a city in unrest. It worked. I was up there last week doing panels, lithium panels on people, and everybody up there is toxic. But it worked. Everybody didn't give a They just hunkered down and everything was good to go. Just like that. That's another one of your chemtrails that is being run by the United Nations. Ours in Oregon come out of Chilliwack, Canada. And so I don't know what, and that's just the least of it. I have identified 18 different forms of air salts that are using. The newest one is lithium. Now, the cadmium, mercury, your aluminum, barium, that's in everything. And you can look at your spit, your saliva. It's white now. It used to not be as white. It's white. And that's the polymer that's in it. And you can actually see it. It'll cluster on the ground when it rains. And sometimes some of the creepy stuff comes out like cobwebs. It's everywhere. They're in your face. They're doing it blatantly now, and your minister, just was it yesterday, came out and said it is a New World Order plot, fake dodge to try to control the world. He said it in public. I posted it on Facebook. Now, I don't know what's happening, but I can tell you that everybody listening to my voice right now is getting it. And now what are you going to do? I don't know. Everybody thinks I've got the answer. I don't. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to change myself. And if I do that rightly, I will have changed the world. Because children are watching me. That's how it's in metaphor. And your so-called mini-me and reincarnation. It's a metaphor, and everybody better pay attention because the physical plane here, where we are right this moment in consciousness, is where we go to be sick spiritually, as a metaphor. I'm a satsangi. I'm initiated by Sharon Singh. I meditate and I train my mind. I've been doing that since the 70s. And I walk that path trying to do the right thing and know that just because what I'm doing might not be the same thing you're doing, that's God's will. What you have to, your answers are inside. I am doing an ecumenical thing with a bunch of religious teachers here in the area around children, because while we all disagree on how we're going to die and where we're going to go and da-da-da-da-da, children part is the bottom line in all of them. So we call that new movement common ground. Now you have a different relationship to yourself. That's where you start. You start by going internal and discovering who you are and what's important to you. That's where the answers are. And so I do it with toys, brain drivers, brain entrainment, biofeedback, whatever. And I'm using didgeridoos. I taught SEALs how to change their perception of time using breath control. And that made their martial arts paranormal. Now, I can tell you that all of this anybody can do it. It isn't, I started with SEALs, I started with intuition. I wanted individuals that were intuitive, that, were outside space-time. They were not using their logic brain. They were using their gut. And that is outside space-time. That's the enteric nervous system. And once you tune into that, you're closer to intent. And the problem is intent is not quite the same as purpose. Purpose is why you're here. Intent is what actually happens at the end of the day, whether you go kicking and screaming or flowing like Buddha. And you have choice. That's what made you God's favorite, the choice part, how you decide you're going to look at your glass of being half empty or half full. And when my half full glass fell over the side, I looked down and lo and behold, that glass was already half fixed. It is a mental way of disciplining your mind to see things certain ways so you have certain doors available. And if you looked at something as half empty, well, look what you just lost. But if you looked at it as half full, well, now you have a mentat that would suggest that everything happens for a reason and everything leads to something better. And you're here to learn those lessons so that you can establish your purpose.
I was going to say, it is a much peaceful way to live your life, isn't it?
Yes, it's always the high road. And you have the choice. And so you have that, you want to look at the good part of what's happening, and good luck with that. And the 5 space. That means if you learn how to move to different parts in the brain, you can actually have a different projection and change the movie. That's how it works. In 1972-3, I wrote embryonic holography. That's why I wasn't in Talbot's book. All of my work was classified top secret because I had evolved a concept called the holographic concept of reality, which was distinguished differently than a quantum universe, which is space-time. Space and time are curved. So with those anomalies, I can prove space is curved. I can show that. Well, all of these things are true and more, which means that when you do certain beliefs, you have opened certain doors and you have closed others. Like a Christian, would if 2 aliens walked in the door, could the Christian see them? I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't believed it. In the movie What the Bleep, it was the shaman, the guy that's outside the box, that was able to see the ship on the horizon. And the Indians couldn't see it because they had no concept of anything being out there like that. Its imagination is where everything happens. It's on the inside, and it's projected outward, and I'm writing about that right now on The Structure of Water. Jerry Pollack, the guy that wrote Fourth Phase of Water, Professor Emeritus at University of Washington, anesthesiology. He's my lead. He's the guy that hired me in 1970. I've known Jerry 45 years. And when I'm a physicist, he's a biophysicist. He's doing structured water. What I'm writing about is how psyche enters into matter. That's chapter 6 in my new book, The Non-Local Mind Holographic Universe. How to kiss your ass goodbye. There's all kinds of ways you can exit here.
Beyond. 3. D.
You say everything we're being told is a false flag. Nothing is real, and about the time you peel a layer back, there's another layer. I am now realizing, even at my pay grade, there are things I probably will never know what happened. That doesn't work that way. Everything's convoluted.
So, Richard, can I ask you, what does it take to peel that onion back to nothing? I mean, I know it takes a lot of time, and I know it takes a lot of energy and a lot of dedication.
You can change windmills like Don Quixote, or choose your battles. And the one I've chosen is myself. And so what I'm going to do is I'm trying to purify myself. I'm not there. I will never get there. But it's like a journey, not the goal. And that's the better way to do it. Simon says you can go halfway to the door. You will never get to the door because it isn't about the door.
And I remember last time we spoke to you, Dr. Miller, you turned around and said that it was always better to look at the glass half full.
It is a way of saying what you're doing.
Yes.
And how your relationship to it. And so the correct way to do it is the journey of duration. That's where time comes in and the way you store memory. That's what Robert Ornstein said was time. It is a duration of consciousness. It's the way you group information, and it gives you a sense of depth. But you can easily change any of that and your experience of time with breath. Just holding your breath, having an emergency situation where everything slows down. Now imagine being able to do that consciously so that you use that in martial arts. Now you have the ability to box on a paranormal level, and that makes you a super soldier because of just having control of breath. You start with a straw, you move to a didgeridoo, and then you go to an American Indian flute and do it like Kill Bill, and do Kenny G, where you blow a single note for 9 minutes and so you show your anger. It's a metaphor again. The breath is the first and last thing you do coming into this conscious state of illness. And to be able to learn how to control your breath allows you to do things you can't do with normal consciousness.
And I want to say this. Can I say this to you before you continue? What just came into my head when you said that was there's something, I won't go into too much detail about it, but astral traveling, in my opinion, is it's a fact. And the way it can be controlled is literally, and this is what I do, Well, for argument's sake, let's say you were to astral travel and hypothetically went to another city in another planet. The way you control it is with breath control. If you do not know...
That's one technique. Robert Monroe, in his Journeys Out of the Body in Carrington, before him, talking about the nature of the Ba and the Ka, and that at the moment of death there's a physical component that has weight that leaves the body. Imagine what that means. That's where they were trying to do it before Monroe started doing his Journeys Out of the Body, and then later moved it to the other coast in Raleigh, North Carolina, or someplace with their Monroe Institute now doing hemisync and brain drivers. And listen, the whole idea of astral projection is that it is something from the inside where you take your consciousness and move it outside the body to some other location, and you have an astral cord or some kind of tie between your physical body and your astral body.
Absolutely.
Remote viewing is quite different. And Matty Pitkinen, and before him, Alex Kavarinen, wrote extensively in called the Emergent Mind Bulletins. It's an e-book run by Leon Sidorov. She's Russian. And I've written for it, and they have a bunch of articles on the difference between remote viewing and astral projection. Remote viewing is PK phenomena outside the body, where you are allowing something, whatever, to look at you, and then you see what they see. Kind of like when the President of America in the movie Independence Day had the alien inside his mind. When the alien was inside his mind, the president was able to see what the alien was seeing. And that is why he said, nuke them all, because they were insects like locusts taking over a planet's natural resources like a locust would, only with technology, advanced technology. And you surrender. It had nothing to do about cooperation. And there are mentats of that kind of alien-based life forms that are driven like Ant-Men and group consciousness of the Borg that are different than individual minds working in concert with a group platform. It's remote viewing's danger, by the way, is because when something is looked at, it causes change in that, and you, or whatever remote viewer, is allowing something to look at him in order to see what the alien or other thing sees, and you are allowing something to change you. And that is different than soul making. It's quite dangerous, and especially when they try to enhance it with drugs. So the work we did before Puthoff and Targ out of SRI in the 80s, all the astral projection studies were done in the 70s, and they're quite different than remote viewing in the 80s.
Okay.
Imagine that. And, well, magic is what I'm really about.
Excellent.
Physics is about to go into magic, which means it's advanced physics with a mystery school, what they call cybernetic anthropology. Laughlin, D'Aquili, and McManus, and brain, symbol, and human experience. That is a book on magic. Even though it isn't, it's cybernetic anthropology. I taught that as a magic course at Harvard. And using Laughlin, D'Aquili, and McManus as my textbook. Just like when I taught shamanism, I used John Curtis in 1970. I used John Curtis Gallant in trance, art, and creativity, prototaxic, parataxic, and syntactic modes of consciousness. The level of relationship you have with yourself.
We're just, I'm madly writing notes. I'm madly writing notes.
I'm having fun with you. I'm just messing with you.
Beyond 333 D.
Hello, Dr. Miller.
Oh, Okay, good. Okay, I'm here. I was over at my computer on Skype. Now I'm here with you at Skype.
Enjoying.
Okay, well, here I am. I'm good to go. What would you like? What's the next question? And we'll get. This is Richard Miller for Beyond 3D Radio.
Excellent. Okay, Dr. Miller.
I know. And you're listening to Beyond 3D Radio, the third dimension.
Wonderful.
I think we're going to see a change in things, in the way things are doing. Underground is not necessarily safe because in the day after tomorrow, you're going to need at least 10 feet of earth between you and the frost line. And when I talk about it, just like in the movie, it's going to drop 10 degrees per second. Nothing lives, and it goes down to minus 100 before everything reboots and goes back into normal. Figure probably a 6-week to 3 to 6 week event, and then you come back up to snowpack that will be on the ground probably for 2 years, and you won't have anything that lives. That means if you go down underground, you're going to have to take your seed and your mycorrhizae with you. Now, that's what I know about underground. There's a book called Underground Bases and Bunkers, and there's a whole chapter just on Grants Pass. This is Spook Central here. The Mormons are here, the Seventh-day Adventists, the Ku Klux Klan, the Posse Comitatus, they're all here, Oath Keepers. They all have undergrounds. And a guy next door to me has just put in, I'm up on top of a hill in the outsides of Grants Pass, and he just put in a 3-acre bunker. We're not talking about cargo boxes now. We're talking about like 3 solid acres of underground bunker. And so, preppers, oh yeah, they're all over the place here, and I don't know that that's going to save you if Nibiru's real. And Nibiru is going to be like one of those kinds of events that you won't really know what's going on until it's actually in your face happening. And right now, there are a bunch of biblicals that are touting, and there it is, see it? There it is, out there by the sun. It's not a sundog, it's la da-da-da. And candidly, I don't know. I can tell you something is affecting the perturbations and orbitals on everything, including the sun. The heliosphere is heating up. It would suggest there is global warming on Mars, Venus, and Pluto. So there was a one moment on Earth when there was a backlash or reverse magnetic field change from solar winds. Usually, the solar winds from the sun will create a direction of magnetic fields. And what happened is the heliosphere, this little bubble of electromagnetics from the sun, dragged through what are called dragon's tails. They are ionized streamers of gas in deep space that created a frictional back push for about 6 to 12 hours on the Earth. Back, I think it was in 2010. I think it was in 2010. There was a reverse polarity. Right now, the true magnetic north is changing. The Earth wobbles, and the Inuit are saying that the skies change. That means the pole has shifted, literally. And Bert Bolin, University of Stockholm, Sweden, is suggesting that we're about to have a pole shift that could be catastrophic. If Nibiru is real and came through near close Earth with high nickel content or something like that, with gravitational fields, we could have a 90-degree pole shift like Bolin is talking about, which is a near extinction event. And it doesn't matter how deep you go in the ground. Now let's talk about deeper ground. In Antarctica, the cave there, I've been in it, is over a mile high, and it has weather. It has. I wasn't the lead on that one. I was basically the physicist brought in on bioluminescence. There was a bacteria that grows on the walls that created light, so you can see down there like the sun. And they want to know how that works, and that was my expertise. And I worked under this woman that was running the project. And when I was there, I saw the Nazi base. For 19 subs, there was a secondary base over there that was 14th century Viking base, which means it's all there. And when I did that interview, and I think it was on Red Ice or something, a captain from the Royal Air Force in England 20 years older, 10 years older than me. I think he was in his 80s. He called me and he said, he was part of that mop-up crew that went in to take out the Nazi base in the 60s when Kennedy went after him. And what he said was there were some Nazis that escaped into deeper caverns. And my guess, that means way down, like where they're drilling into the Moa or the Mantle. And that's like 100 miles down. And those caves are in the earth as well. There is biblical reference after Noah of another group of humans that escaped the floods by going into deeper caverns. My guess is the reason we're not speaking German right now is that those Nazis ran into something down below them and they stopped that nonsense. I don't know what it is. It might be a gray. Who knows? Like abyss, where you have entities in habitats we can't simply go to that are existing, like the trenches and things like that. Technologies, I don't know. I do know that the fact that we're not speaking German with this so-called 1,000-year war would suggest that something stopped that nonsense. Certainly wasn't us. I remember when Admiral Burr, I've seen videos of the Russian fleets, films of our Captain Burr's fleets going in and losing 3 ships to Foo Fighters and jets that did not exist then. Where did those all come from? I have no idea what it all means. My part was just this very narrow part of bioluminescence with bacteria. And with that concept of the mantle also holding caverns, I know that that's where the second Bush went when he invaded Iraq going after the Stargate. He went up into the northern part of Iraq where the Yazidi, it's a cult group there, have described in Isaiah Joseph's book called Devil Worship or the Sacred Traditions of the Yazidi. They talk about a Stargate, and that was pre-Christian devil worship, which suggested, and I think the reason the second Bush went in was to get the Stargate because his father couldn't find it. And the second Bush went in with tomography, and that's when, right after the invasion, he got on board that ship, all his uniform and all his shit on it, and he says, "We got it, the war's over." And then, of course, it wasn't, because it was all about war and oil and, that kind of thing. But they got the Stargate. However, I happen to have a copy of the Yazidi in my library, and I can tell you there is mention of a second Stargate, just like in the movie. In fact, that's where the original Stargate writers got their concept.
I was about to say that. That's literally, when you describe that, that's exactly what was going on in the Stargate series. They even had an episode where they went underground and found a civilization that was German in origin. They had a Nordic look about them, and all of a sudden, remember that? All that stuff was there.
The Greys may not be alien. They might be evolved humans from the flood that escaped into deeper caverns. That's why they got gray and no melatonin and the pigments and whatever. I don't know. I have had very little close encounter experience. I have close encounter. I did some stuff with the government. I did 2 artifacts, and candidly, what I've seen, what I know, I don't know if it's aliens or other directions of hominoids. I don't know how that all works. What I do know is the technology I looked at, I couldn't tell if it was alien or pre-epoch, like from a different time zone. Like when they had dance, like Ghost Dance and Whirling Dervish, where they could change space-time. I've seen that happen. How are the pyramids built? I don't know. What I do know is that sound and movement, like Tai Chi and whatever, Ghost Dance, has something else going on there. And I don't know how that all works. That's one of the things I'm, curiously studying now. So Stay tuned. I'm sorry I tangent so much. These are things that I feel are important concepts for everybody right now to realize at the end of times. It's epoch time now, right now. But, I love Australia, and one of the things Matt Stein and I would have loved to do is go into the outback up in Adelaide, and what I'd like to do is have the Aborigines show me how they find water in the desert, and then I'd like to take the Aborigines into downtown Brisbane and show them how we'll find it in Brisbane when it all goes down. Brisbane itself is at serious risk from the ocean, and it's a beautiful, beautiful city, the way it's laid out and everything, but it's not safe. Melbourne, you're further south, and I don't know what your tidal wave potentials are, like it is up near the Gold Coast, and
more inland, more the Port Phillip Bay aspect of things. So we're basically protected by what they call the heads.
Is that right? Yeah, but see, down near Melbourne is where out in the ocean further, is where they mine all the deuterium. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of heavy water out there in the ocean.
And the sharks to prove it.
Yeah, you got that right.
Yeah, and the sharks to prove it. There you go. Nice talking to you both. Thanks.
Love you, Rick.
Take care, Rick. Thanks a lot for that. Bye-bye.
Yeah, you bet. Bye-bye.
Beyond 3.
Well, after listening to Dr. Richard Alan Miller, you need to take a break, you need to think about it, and you need to take the notes that you did and say, okay, I'll deal with this over the next 6 months. But you're not going to have 6 months, guys, because next week we're going to do it again, and we're going to give you some really interesting information. I think you guys are really going to love it.
That was 2015.
Yeah.
And that's all still relevant.
It's all still relevant, and the fact of the matter is a lot of the things that he's talking about, in my opinion, were, what's the word I'm looking for? Vital, but forward-thinking, predicting the future in a sense of what's going to happen on the planet. And it's interesting insofar as it's coming to the proverbial head in a lot of areas, not just political, but geologically as well. You mentioned earlier in the show, Clint, about the fact of the whales beaching themselves.
That was at the top of the show, yeah.
And yeah, the Pacific Ocean, from what most scientists say, is done and dusted.
Oh, it's sick. It's incredibly. Barrier Reef is done. We're not going to save the Barrier Reef, and I'm sorry, kids.
It really is a shame if you haven't been up there to see it when it was at its vital best, because it was absolutely stunning. And yeah, Japan didn't do this on purpose by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time, like they did in Atlantis, certain things, as far in the name of progressing humanity, can be a detriment to the planet, and the planet will self-correct.
Well, that's still debatable whether or not that tsunami was man-made.
Oh, a lot of people will say that there was something really interesting going on there, but quite frankly...
That's got a lot to do with HAARP.
It does. I was just about to say HAARP.
That's HAARP.
Yeah, so we just have to be wary of the fact that...
I was going to say whether manipulation can be controlled for economic purposes.
It can.
To collapse a continent's economy.
And it can be controlled to deal with pricing of commodities as well, especially when it comes to wheat and corn and frozen concentrated orange juice. That's a reference to Trading Places, the movie.
I knew where you were going. But it's all about natural alternatives again, which is what Dr. Miller was talking about. And
natural alternatives is what our guest will talk about next week as well.
Your mystery guest.
It's not a mystery. It's just you don't know the name, but you will. And a lot of people will understand it, especially if you live in Queensland, in and around the Brisbane area. You'll definitely want to listen in, because this is the kind of information that can be life-changing. And that's why you really must just open up the mind, suspend your disbelief, and listen, because you'll learn a lot.
And drink more water.
Drink a heck of a lot more water, because the water sources around this planet are shriveling, at least the good ones, and you need to get a good source of good water.
And that's all we have time for tonight, Matt.
Indeed. Guys, take good care. Thanks for listening in tonight. We will catch you next week for a very special edition of Beyond 3D.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.